So let's talk the NFL because it never stops, right? It's always going. And we're in that phase now, Booger, where every rookie looks great, even though there hasn't been one team practice yet. Every rookie's going to be sensational, all those things. What's the one team that, as you study the league, that you don't think is being talked enough as could be a really good team?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know we've kind of labeled them as a darling the last few years, and they haven't lived up to the bill. But I like what the Chargers are doing if they can stay healthy. I know a lot of people look at Justin Herbert, and he's kind of the chosen one that hasn't really gotten them to a point where some of the other guys like Hurts and Allen have gotten their teams. But I like what they're doing out there. The coach scares me because he doesn't know when to punt the football, or he doesn't like 3 points sometimes. But overall, their talent, at some point when their talent stays healthy, because this is a league that's built on talent. Like, if my players are better than yours, as long as the coach usually doesn't screw it up, I'm going to win. And they got a lot of talent out there in L.A. And so I think based on the past history, a lot of people have been burned picking the Chargers, and I think a lot of people are going to be off of them. I think the Chargers are going to surprise some people this year in a loaded AFC.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Can they surprise some people enough to overtake the Chiefs in the AFC West? Because that division expected to be pretty competitive, especially with the Broncos bringing in Sean Payton as their head coach. Can Russell Wilson get fixed? How do you think things might shake out in the division?
Well, I mean, as long as Patrick Mahomes is in KC, they're going to own the division. I think we were all fooled last year by saying that the West was maybe it's the toughest division ever. Like, we didn't realize that the Raiders are going to be terrible and the Broncos are going to get a Russell Wilson that look washed up. But as we know, once you get into the dance called the postseason, it's about matchups. And I think, if the Chargers are able to get into the postseason, which I think they will, and Brandon Staley can remember what got him the head coaching job, which is playing better defense, I think they'll be able to get some favorable matchups. And then it's about your stars got to play. Like, once you get into the dance, Herbert, who's going to command $50 million a year, he's got to play. When you look at some of the defense, Bosa and those guys, they got to show up and they got to play in the postseason. And so once you get these 14 teams in, I think usually any of those teams have an opportunity to win a championship.
Booger, you won 2 Super Bowls in your career. The year after winning the Super Bowl, it's always the hardest year ever because you've played long into the season. The offseason kind of creeps up really quick on you. Do you think that'll have an effect on Philadelphia? I mean, they are really talented, and I don't know if anybody's closed the gap on them other than San Francisco, maybe Dallas. But do you think that'll affect Philly at all?
Yeah, it could affect them because what you're talking about, Michael, is a mindset issue. Like, if Philly is going into this season saying, okay, we're going to do the same things, we're going to dominate, we're going to get 70 or 80 sacks on defense, our linebackers are going to be the weak link of our team, our corners are going to play great, and Jalen Hurts is going to be an MVP candidate, those things are probably not going to happen that way. Like, every year is different. And I think that if you're Sirianni, you got to approach, what can I get this team to be and be at their best? Because every team's going to be different. Like, Kansas City was different the last time they went to the Super Bowl as opposed to winning it this year. And I think as a coach, you got to figure out what this team is going to be. Maybe you'd only get 50 sacks this year from a defensive standpoint. How are you going to be better? And I think that's the mistake as fans, as players, because it's human nature, right? Hey, we got everybody back. Think about the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers won the Super Bowl and said, let's run it back. And they were terrible the next year. And so it's never going to be the same. Even when you bring the same people back, it's not going to be the same. And so the mindset of the team has to be set in training camp. Once the pads go on, you can't set the mindset in minicamp when everybody's running around in shorts and T-shirts. You got to set the mindset when people can actually get knocked upside of the head. And I think it's going to be up to the Eagles and their coaching staff to set the mindset and to figure out what this team in 2023 is going to be, because it's going to be different than 2022. I don't care if you bring every single guy back, it's going to be a different team, and they got to figure out what team they're going to be.
And it's funny, usually a team that maybe exceeds expectations a little bit, or you have a quarterback that gets paid, usually that's the time to fade them. And I just don't feel that way about this Eagles team. I think they will come back strong and get over their season win total. You mentioned the Buccaneers, your former team. I've seen some national writers come out and say, including Peter King this past week, that the Buccaneers are a bottom 2-3 team for them going into this NFL season. Obviously, life without Tom Brady is going to be a little bit different. Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask going head-to-head for the quarterback job this year. What do you make of this Bucs team and where they fit in things?
Well, it's simple math to me. It's called accounting. At some point, when you borrow money against future cap to support the Tom Brady years, at some point you got to pay the banker back. And I think the Buccaneers got a lot of debt. They got a lot of debt cap. They got to pay the banker back. And it's kind of simple math just to make up some numbers. If everybody else is spending $225 million on players and they got those players on the field, the Bucs are probably spending about $150. Well, guess what? I can buy more with $225 than you can with $150, so my team is going to be better. So I understand what Peter King is saying. The best thing for the Bucs this year is to be just good enough to be entertaining, but just bad enough to get a top 5 pick, because the future quarterback of that team is not on the field. And if they can somehow finagle a way to be in the top 2 or 3 and be in the Drake May, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams sweepstakes, I think that's the best thing for them. But if you ask any team, would you trade a Super Bowl to be in the position the Bucs are in? Every team would trade that, including the Rams. The Rams are in the same situation. So, yeah, they're not going to be good this year, whether it's bottom 2, bottom 5. Either way, it's going to be a year that people in Tampa should hope to be entertained, but they're not going to win a lot of football games, I don't think.
I agree with you. I think Todd Bowles is in just a horrible spot because he's got he's paying the price for what they did in the past, and that price won a Super Bowl. Same thing. I was surprised Sean McVay went back because of that. This is going to take a lot of work to do. But I want to ask you this question. Put your GM hat on, Booger. If you were the GM of the Arizona Cardinals and this season goes the way we all expect it to go and you end up with the first pick in the draft, would you take Caleb Williams or would you continue down the Kyler Murray road?
Well, I'm a believer in Caleb Williams and what I've seen so far. I'm not a believer in Kyler Murray. And it has a little bit less to do with the physical skills and more to do with the mindset and the mental makeup. Like when you're in that position, being a quarterback, making $40, $50 million a year, there's a certain way you handle yourself. There's a certain way you do things. There's a certain way you carry yourself because you are, in fact, the CEO that everyone sees of my franchise. I just don't like the way the kid has carried himself from the moment he got in the league. It's almost as if when they hired Cliff and Cliff drafted him, he became so entitled that, hey, I've been running this offense since the 6th grade. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to do some of the other things that everybody else is doing. I don't need to be the quote-unquote CEO. I can pout. I can do things my way. And if the numbers would work out, meaning if my owner says, okay, we're willing to deal with the salary cap ramifications of cutting, because I don't think he can trade it, of cutting a former number 1 pick, a guy that we paid a lot of money, if the numbers would work out, yeah, I would definitely not only entertain it, I would probably pull the trigger on it. And I think it's something Arizona is going to have to really ponder. I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be able to play a large portion of this season, if at all. And so you're going to have to evaluate him based on what you've seen in the past. And I don't know if you've seen enough in the past that if you're Arizona and you got the top 2 picks, not just Caleb Williams, Michael, I think Drake May has a chance to be the number 1 pick also, based on what I know.
Right.
Like he's 6'5", he's 220, he can run 4.5, run 4.6, and this is a kid that has his head on straight. Mac Brown has told me point blank directly, like he's had offers from other schools to come in there and they're going to pay him $4 or $5 million to leave and go elsewhere. He said, no, I'm here at North Carolina. That tells me a lot about the kid and his mindset, and that's something that goes a lot farther than just the talent. So, yeah, Arizona and Gannon have got a lot to deal with and a lot to figure out this season.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.